Halloween Kills, out in theaters, another one in the line of classic slashers, once again starring Jamie Lee Curtis. It's the 12th entry in the Halloween series, but story-wise it's actually the third part. In 2018, a film named just Halloween was released, which was a sequel only to the very first one, the original 1978 Halloween. It ignored all the previous sequels in between, and now Kills is the second part of a planned modern trilogy of sequels, with Halloween Dies planned for the near future to round it up. Now, the 2018 film was actually very good. I enjoyed the fact that while it stayed true to the slasher origins and was a very competent film of that genre, it also put an entirely new spin on this genre by exploring the character of Laurie Strode as a survivor of Michael Myers 40 years later, how those events impacted her entire life, her family, and how that trauma remained as a huge shadow all those decades later, which was also an interesting metaphor for abuse and trauma in general. So it is with great disappointment that I report that Halloween Kills is quite awful. It squanders the potential that that previous movie has set up for further exploration, and it's just an overall mess. After seeing it, I've actually read something that fits perfectly as an explanation. Apparently, the filmmakers had a clear idea for the initial sequel, the 2018 film, and they had a clear idea for the conclusion of this storyline, the film that's coming, but they struggled to come up with an idea for the middle chapter which would justify a whole movie devoted to that. I think it shows. I think they didn't manage to come up with anything worthy, and even for fans of the franchise, I think it's just going to be disappointing. The story starts with a flashback to the events of the original 1978 Halloween from the perspective of a police officer, and then we skip right to the ending of the 2018 film. Laurie and her family are taken to a hospital while Michael Myers ends up escaping from the burning house, hacking his way through a bunch of firefighters and moving back into town. But this time around, the citizens refuse to wait like sheep for slaughter. Some of the now adult old characters from the original film decide to take matters into their own hands and essentially organize a mob of people who intend to hunt down Michael before he hunts them. Now, this is an idea which is interesting on paper, I think, especially as the film kind of teases exploring this idea that the evil of Michael has sort of infected the townsfolk. Not directly speaking, but that they are now becoming monsters of their own in reaction to what he's doing, that they are losing their own humanity, sort of trying to get revenge. But I felt in execution just sucks. First of all, for a long time we switch focus to characters other than Laurie, who are pretty underdeveloped, and I ultimately just didn't give a fuck about them. All the while, Laurie, like the character that we're meant to sympathize with, she spends an entire film in a hospital bed, never even coming face to face with Michael. I know that's a slight spoiler, but I felt I had to get it out there because I think that the trailers for the film were basically false advertising in the way that they were trying to kind of set up the conflict to once again be primarily between Laurie and Michael. And Laurie is a secondary, if not tertiary, character in this film. Her daughter and granddaughter take a more active role instead. But even then, it feels like the film is all over the place with these storylines. At one point, the granddaughter goes off to search for Michael with some other people, and the focus switches to the mob forming in the hospital. And it just takes such a long time. By the time we switch back to the young girl, I was like, oh shit, I forgot she's still in the film. Also, I felt that ultimately, the exploration of the mob and the self-perpetuating nature of violence ends up going pretty much nowhere. The dialogue is pretty awful, with many characters just spouting continual nonsense about evil and revenge and so on. And then we get to the ending, the climax of the film, which is just so egregiously stupid. I didn't believe I was watching with my own two eyes. I put it like this: I know that Michael Myers is, is canonically an unstoppable force of nature, and he became the sort of stereotypical example of that trope where you can do whatever you want to the killer and he'll still keep coming back. But the ending to this film is basically a parody of itself. I hated it. On the plus side, the music still kicks ass, especially the old main theme from John Carpenter, and there are a few sequences involving Michael which are properly nasty, brutal, and unpleasant. I mean, really, some of the kills are very awful, as they should be. But apart from that, the movie just kind of lacks any substance at all, and it does feel like a bunch of hastily put together filler material before the final showdown between Laurie and Michael. Did we really need this? I think not.